Excellency, thank you very much for joining us. Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week this year focuses on systems transformation for sustainability. How central is the future of the Arctic to the global sustainability agenda?
For centuries, even until 20, 30 years ago, the Arctic was considered to be very remote, of no importance for the rest of the world. Now, increasingly, it is being recognized as an absolutely crucial part of the planet for the future of every nation, every continent. And it's a little bit difficult to understand that because we are all brought up on maps which show the Arctic up on top, very distant, remote, and so on. If you think about the weather, you think about the rainfall, you think about the oceans, you think about the survivability of places like Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and so on, the melting of the ice in the Arctic is absolutely crucial. The reason why there are rising sea levels all around the world, the reason why the monsoon weather system is out of order in Asia is the melting of the Arctic sea ice. But also recently, partly thanks to President Trump, the world has discovered that the Arctic is also a crucial part of the new 21st century geopolitical chessboard. That is why almost every major country in the world wants to place itself in one way or another in the Arctic. And the newest aspect of the importance of the Arctic, as if everything else was not enough, is that the new space race, which we have among the most powerful countries in the world for mining in space, energy from space, connectivity through space, the Arctic is the best ground on the Earth for space stations in order to participate in this new geopolitical space race. You need a location in the Arctic. So whether we are talking about food production, weather, ocean levels, mining, minerals, energy, defense, security, or the space race, the Arctic has become absolutely crucial for our future.
2 points I would like to follow up on. One is the US president, and two is the global competition that you've mentioned. When President Trump says he must get Greenland, is that strategy? Is that negotiation or a dangerous misunderstanding?
Well, it's very difficult to answer that question because he hasn't really explained what he means by it. If he means that he wants to acquire the territory, like a real estate player who wants to construct a new building in the center of Manhattan, and he wants to be able to add that territory to the map of the United States, that goes against almost every principle, every thinking, as well as the international system. If, however, he's talking about evolution of security structures, defense structures, mining in Greenland and other parts, there is already in place a governmental system by elected governments in Greenland and through the Kingdom of Denmark to allow that to happen. But to some extent, I think he has done the world a favor by putting forward this, to many people's outrageous demand, because he has woken up the media, the business community, all the nations, the political leadership everywhere in the world, to the importance of Greenland as the fundamental part of the Arctic.
So you see it positive?
So it will be fascinating to see what's going to happen, and as we speak, or in a few hours' time, there will be a crucial meeting in Washington where the Vice President Mons and the Secretary of State will meet the representatives of the government of Greenland and the government of the Kingdom of Denmark. So this is happening as we speak. So it would be very difficult for me and even risky to predict what's going to happen. but it will definitely be a testing case of how the world is going to move towards a new future.
Mhm. You spoke about the global competition. Is Arctic the new arena for that competition, you think?
Well, in many ways it is, because you already have all the major European countries, America, Russia, China, India, Japan, Korea, and others, in one way or another, doing extensive scientific research in the Arctic. You have polar research stations in Korea, Japan, China, as well as in Germany, Italy, and other places, in addition to the United States and Russia, looking at the polar regions and especially the Arctic. So there you already have the presence of all the major countries in the world. Then you bring in the enormous resources in the Arctic, whether they are energy or mining or ocean resources. You already have extraordinary commercial linkage between the Arctic part of Russia, which is huge, almost half of the Arctic is the Arctic part of Russia, and China, and potentially India, and maybe Pakistan, through new pipelines of gas coming from the Siberian Arctic part of Russia down to China, India, and perhaps Pakistan. So it's almost impossible to envisage the future energy evolution of the major Asian countries without access to the energy resources in the Arctic. Then you add new global shipping through the northern passages due to the melting of the ice. And then you add the enormous ocean resources that are there. Because although we use the term Arctic in most languages, it indicates a kind of a region. It does not really communicate the enormous size of the Arctic, because if we add it all up, the entire Arctic, from Alaska to the end of Russia and everything in between and the oceans, is almost the size of Africa. It's almost the size of Africa. But in our mind, when we talk about the Arctic, we don't have an image of a part of the planet the size of Africa. No, we don't. But that is the reality. We are, in fact, for the first time in human history, trying to map out how are we going to govern, how are we going to utilize, how are we going to protect this enormous continental-sized part of the planet.
Amazing. President Trump always justifies his pressure by referring to the presence of China and Russia. What do you think of that? Does it justify it really?
He is not really right so far as that is concerned, no. And the risk is to go back to kind of Cold War terminology of an enemy of an enemy. The part of the Arctic where China is present big time is the Russian part of the Arctic. Yes, China is a major player in the Russian part of the Arctic. In terms of the oceans around Greenland, first of all, it's very difficult to navigate those oceans because they're mostly frozen and very dangerous for most part of the year. So far, there has not been any big increase in Russian or Chinese vessels. And I would respectively say to President Trump, maybe the first order of business should be to build a global harbor in the Arctic part of the United States, because the United States so far doesn't have a global harbor in the Arctic part of the United States. So the U.S. is a latecomer in terms of shipping and transport and icebreakers and harbors in the Arctic. He recently signed a memorandum with the President of Finland building icebreakers for the U.S. because compared to even a country like Finland, not to mention Russia or China, the U.S. is a latecomer so far as icebreaker capabilities are concerned. So if the President of the United States, which I can understand and which makes sense, wants to enhance the relevance of the U.S. in the Arctic, you start at home. To think you will solve those problems by just acquiring Greenland is a big mistake.
That's a very powerful message, sir. What do you think the next step for Donald Trump will be?
Well, you know, the entertaining part of watching President Trump is one doesn't really know
what will happen next.
I mean, I think many of us, at least in Europe, make the mistake of writing him off. I mean, just listen to the noise and the statements and so on and don't take it seriously. And you have to hand it to him that he has won monumental political victories within the U.S. political system. You might disagree with his policies, sure, but there have been presidents of the United States with whom we have disagreed sort of before. He is not the first American president to go into countries, faraway places, with a military power. You can just look at George W. Bush to get recent history, not to mention Nixon or others. So, to some extent, America has throughout the 20th century behaved in the way that President Trump is perceived to be behaving. On the other hand, he says that is not his intention. So, once again, the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. I have a good friend in America, a senator, who during the Trump's first term was asked often, I mean, how do you explain this new American president? And the answer was, the key to understanding Trump is that he's a real estate guy. And real estate guys, they think in locations, locations, locations. And for him, Venezuela, Greenland, Canada are perhaps just yet another location. It remains to be seen. So if you enjoy global politics, you can secure a good seat in the theater and watch what will happening on the stage, because I can assure you it will be dramatic.
Why?
Well, because the intentions, what is at stake, all the elements I've described to you that are part of the Arctic profile, realizing the combined Arctic is the size of Africa, and no big leader of the 21st century, whether it's Russia, China, India, United States, Germany, France or others, can maintain their global position without having in one way or another a position in the Arctic. So therefore, it is a new global game, if you want to call it that, or a global theater, with no long-term history, because it's only in the last 20 or 30 years that we have been able to come together with respect to the Arctic. So I say again, in order to imagine what is at stake, just think about if we suddenly got the announcement that the continent of Africa had been discovered, and we had the task of mapping out the governmental structure, the business system, the mining, the resources, the indigenous people, the nations and so on. That is the scope of what is at stake in the Arctic. It is of continental proportions.
Do you think he will probably use a military power to invade, probably, or you don't think that's an option?
Well, I can't really have a position on that, because I doubt if he even knows it himself.
So what is his end game then?
I can't answer that. I gave a lecture through remote to a class at Harvard for the last week on the Arctic, on the new geopolitics of the Arctic. And I've done that in previous years. So this time, last week, I said to the Harvard students, in the past I've given you a long analysis of why the Arctic has become geopolitically important and will become. Now I simply say, turn on Sky, turn on CNN, read the New York Times, read the Wall Street Journal, and you will see it happening in real time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let's hope for the best then.
Yeah.